Hello and welcome to this workshop. I've forgotten the name now because I keep changing it. Hilarious. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those of you who are here live, and thank you for those who are choosing to come on the replay at a time convenient for you. Either's fine with me, obviously. So thank you for being here. My intention for this workshop is that it's really, really nourishing for you, that it inspires you to free yourself from any struggle with overwhelm. Yes, overwhelm, but specifically self-care overwhelm. So this means that you get to feel like you can design your self-care, your way of caring for yourself in a way that really works for you. So my wish for you is that you take away something really practical from this, and that my words resonate with you throughout the coming days and really help you to shift how you're thinking about how you take care of yourself best. How can we make it easy, delicious and fun rather than something to add to your to-do list or your invisible get better at list? So how to get the most out of our time together. So either take the time if you can and go all in and make a nest of cushions and get a blanket and a drink in your journal, or just do it however you can. So I'm inviting you to notice how you're taking time for this and being okay with that. So sometimes when things are really busy, it's best not to add things like this to our to-do list and just say, well, I'm just going to listen to it while I prepare dinner. I'm just going to listen to it while I do this. And that is perfect for you because you're here and that's all that matters. So just allowing yourself to be here as best you can and letting go of any judgment around how you ought to be doing it differently. So I'm going to start the presentation now. I can remember how to do it. Okay. So if self-care in any way is adding to your overwhelm, if it's making you feel guilty when you do take it and kind of inadequate if you're not taking enough care, if you feel like you're not taking enough care of yourself, if it's adding to your stress, any pressure, if the whole thing's just making you feel exhausted because it's just hard, then by definition, it's not self-care. And when I say it like that, it kind of feels obvious, but I feel that it needs pointing out because when we start to feel this kind of pressure, we need to disperse it as quickly as we can. Pressure is so unhelpful. Overwhelm is so unhelpful because it blocks all the easier ways of doing things. And we want to make self-care easy and delicious and fun. So I'd just like to invite you to think about how self-care makes you feel at the moment. Whether you've got this kind of, yes, I ought to book massages. Yes, I ought to do this. I should be doing this. So if in any way you feel like you ought to know better, you ought to just be good at self-care, you ought to have it sussed by now, you ought to be doing more self-care, or even like feeling like, yeah, I shouldn't be exhausted because I should know how to take better care of myself, or I shouldn't need so much self-care. That can be another one. Maybe it's almost like a feeling of being like too weak. It's like I shouldn't need that much rest. I shouldn't need that much time to myself. I shouldn't need all this self-care. It's too much. It's too much. What's wrong with me? So that could be another pressure. So I'm just going to list some pressures here and just let the words wash over you and see what comes up for you. How about feeling like you ought to be able to just keep going with the level of self-care you have already? So maybe things have changed, like you used to think that you were coping really well and you had it sussed, and now suddenly you're really tired, or you're craving, I don't know, more time outside, or more time to yourself, or more time with friends, or something's off now. It's like, it's almost like, why am I so demanding of myself and the amount of self-care that I need? Or maybe feeling that self-care is selfish. This is quite common, obviously, because we're taught that putting ourselves first is selfish. Particularly, I think we're taught this as women, that we somehow kind of have this inbuilt thing of, when everybody else is taken care of, then there's time for myself. That putting our own needs first, unless we're doing it in order to cope better, is just not acceptable. Does that resonate at all? Or maybe it feels like it's just a luxury and you can't afford that luxury. So until you have more money, or until you have more childcare, or until this particular busy time is finished, then you cannot afford it. It's a luxury. It's just crazy. It's just like, yeah, nice to have, Heidi, but how? So see if that resonates. And then, do you sometimes feel guilty, or often feel guilty, when you do take time for yourself? So it's like you finally manage to make the effort and ask for the space for yourself, or negotiate the time for yourself, or decide that you won't get something done so that you can rest. And then you just find it really hard to be present in that time, or to really use that time as you intended, because actually your mind is just bombing you with stuff about, yeah, but you ought to be doing something else. You can't really afford this time. So although you kind of negotiate that time for yourself, or for example, this is a classic one, I think, doing something nice for yourself specifically, like maybe going for a walk, or maybe having your hair cut, or a massage, and the whole time your mind is just pointing out all of the other things you ought to be doing instead. So although you're creating that time and that self-care for yourself, your mind is elsewhere, so you're not quite in it. Does that, just see what resonates for you? Or yeah, the worst one, I think, is this feeling that self-care is just another thing to do. So anytime that self-care gets added to a to-do list, I think that's a real, for me, that's a real warning sign of overwhelm. Overwhelm around self-care specifically, because if I start adding, sort this problem out about myself, you know, like, oh, I must book a massage because my back's bad, or because I've pushed myself to, I mean, I honestly don't do this anymore, because, well, as I will share my story in a moment, I learned the hard way that it's, for me, it just doesn't work to push myself that hard. So I honestly don't do this now, but in the past it would be, you know, the booking of something to solve a problem about myself, rather than just because it's nice. So it was always that pushing. Or does it, so then that means lots of things would get added to my to-do list, which were appointments and things to solve the problem of my body not quite coping, or well, eventually my mind just going, it's too much, help me. Feeling like there's always something wrong with you. So this is linked, isn't it? So to what I was saying, so like bits keep going wrong, like it's almost like when your car gets old, it's like, oh my god, what's wrong with me now? Why have I got another cold? Why does this bit of me hurt? Why do I keep bumping into things, and actually that really hurt? And why do I need an appointment to sort this out? And what's wrong with this? And you just become this like high maintenance vehicle all of a sudden, because you're pushing yourself too hard, I would argue. Feeling inadequate about your self-care. Others seem to be better at it. So comparing yourself to others who just either need less self-care, or they just seem to have it sussed. You know, I have always admired women who can just walk in a room and like, they just seem to be really confident, and they just expect to have facials and massages and time to themselves, and they have really good boundaries, and they just say no to things. You're like, actually, now I'm saying that, I'm thinking, is this a dream person? No. I have met women who just seem to be better trained, almost, yeah, definitely better trained to just expect to look after themselves, to not expect. But I think it's a rarity. But if you're comparing yourself to somebody else and making assumptions that that person's better at self-care, it's just worth noticing that for now. So these are just things to notice about what's going on for you. Another one I've got is just feeling thoroughly overwhelmed by self-care, as in when somebody suggests, or you know that you need to up your level of self-care, you're like, yeah, but I don't really know what you mean. Because although it feels obvious, it just feels a bit confusing. It's like, yeah, but I do have massages and I still feel rubbish. So I don't really know what you mean. What do you mean? Because they have a different perspective, or actually it's, you know, I bet, do you do this yourself? It's very easy to say to somebody else and to care for somebody else and say, are you looking after yourself? It's an easy thing to say and we mean well and it's said with love, but what do we mean? Or maybe somebody else can see how you're pushing yourself in a way where it's not necessary. I don't know, but it's worth kind of, I always think it's worth noticing when we compare ourselves to others, because it can mirror, reflect back things that can be helpful to us. So this is all looking at this for you, because what I want you to do is get an idea of where you are now. We can only start from where we are. And I know that sounds like an obvious thing to say once more, but I'm going to say it again. You can only start from where you are. And for myself, and for my clients, I know often we're trying to start from somewhere else, like where we think we ought to be. So not really admitting how things are, or from somewhere far worse, because we actually are judging ourselves really hardly, really harshly, and actually things aren't that bad. So often we're not that aware of where we are, because it's hard. Self-awareness is a practice, and that's why it's easier to look at somebody else and see where they're not looking after themselves. It's just easier from somebody else's point of view. So I just invite you for now to notice what resonated most with some of those things, and just to notice where you are at this point in time. So not where you used to be, or not even where you want to be, but just like right now, what's your struggle with self-care? What's coming up for you? And just notice that, because it's just useful information. So then notice if there's any layer of judgment about that. So if it's hard to admit that actually you're struggling with self-care, we'll just notice that as well. So real gentleness, love, kindness in your noticing. Keep your noticing neutral. Really important. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I completely burnt out, losing my career, my confidence, my health, and my financial stability. And I did this whilst prioritizing my self-care. Now, this may sound absolutely crazy. Like, how did you manage that, Heidi? And that's what I'm going to explain, so that I can be your terrible warning, because I genuinely hope that you haven't suffered a burnout of this depth yet. If you have, then I'm sure that this will help you as well. I hope so. That's my intention. But let me just introduce myself fully before I do this. My name's Heidi Mark, the Gentle Rebel Coach. I coach women who are successful, so they have a lot of the things they set out to create in their life, but they're really struggling with that success. They're struggling to enjoy it. They're struggling to feel well in it. The cost of maintaining it is too high. So I work one-to-one and within group programs and courses to help successful women feel successful, love their success, and create what they want next. Because all of the women I work with want more, but they get stuck feeling like, well, I can't even handle this. How am I going to have all of that I want? Well, you can. And the way for me is teaching it through this gentle rebellion, where we just turn things around and rebel gently, because it doesn't use so much energy as rebelling fiercely, and it's private and secret, so it allows you to sort yourself out without anybody else needing to be involved. And this is really, really helpful when you're in a successful career or business, because you don't want to lose your career respect, your professional respect. So it's really helpful to have somebody to work with privately, because you can just sort yourself out. Nobody needs to know, and then it doesn't become a crisis and it doesn't cost you. So that's how I work. So, and I'm also the host of the Overwhelm is Optional podcast, which is probably why you're here, because hopefully you're one of my lovely listeners. So that's me. How did I get here? Because I didn't listen to my body is the very short answer. Because I overloaded my mind, because that's what I was taught to do. That's what we're trained to do. And that's what I did. And in doing that, I disconnected from my heart. So originally I wanted to be a coach. I was a coach, but I chickened out for lots of reasons. I kind of fell into a hole after graduating. And the financial crash hit and lots of things happened. There were lots of things going on and I just wasn't ready. I didn't have the courage I'd set up my coaching business, but I just didn't quite manage it. And I was persuaded to go into teaching for lots of reasons. And they were good reasons. And I had a good run of just over 8 years in the education sector. And I really went for it. So I brought coaching into a large secondary school, which is unheard of, but I argued that every teacher needs a coach. So I really was riding high here. I was really pulling in all of my skills. I was a really good teacher. I taught teachers. I spoke at conferences. I had a blog. You know, I had a really successful career and I was riding high. So if you had asked me at any point in that time, until the last couple of years, I would have told you that teaching was the best job in the world. And I did love it. But tellingly, one of the first blogs I wrote was called "I Love My Job, but It's Killing Me." So I knew, and I also knew from previous experience of working in education, also from my own children going through education, that I was entering a profession which was toxic for well-being. My partner also was a teacher who'd left very early on from burnout. So I knew. And yet I still chose to go in because I compromised on my dreams. And that's okay. I'm okay with that now. But it cost me because I spent most of that time trying and feeling like I was succeeding. But looking back, it was a circle of finding a way to keep the job, the career, that deep fulfillment. You know, you have a lot of power as a teacher to make things better. You know, and I did in many, many ways, but it cost me. And every time I thought I had a solution, so I hacked my sleep, I hacked my diet, I hacked my exercise, productivity, you name it. I dug deep into the research. You know, I read the 4-hour work week. Obviously, you can't have a 4-hour work week as a teacher, but all of that productivity, all of that, you know, the newest way of thinking, I pulled into my career, and I theoretically had it all sussed. And I was also, you know, I practiced yoga, meditation. I taught meditation. I started maths lessons teaching meditation. I was doing all of the things. So why did I burn out? I burnt out, as I said, because I didn't listen to my body. I thought I was prioritizing my self-care. So I compartmentalized work and home. I didn't bring work home. That's unheard of in the teaching profession. But it meant that I worked more intensely at work. So what I was doing was pushing myself really, really hard so that I could have time off, pushing myself really hard so I was earning every bit of time off. And then eventually in my time off, I couldn't switch off, or I just crashed. And so I was basically struggling to have a life. I still did lots of things. So this photograph here is of me in New York, early on in my teaching career. You know, thinking, yay, I've got this wonderful career in front of me. I'm loving my life. I had no idea that Heidi back then had no idea what she was about, the damage she was about to cause herself over that just under a decade of prioritizing my self-care while trying to maintain my success and have a full life. And there are lots of things that I did in that time which were wonderful, lots of traveling, moving house, loads of things. It's not, from the outside looking in, it would have looked like I had it sussed. And I thought I was doing okay because I believed that there was no other way. So all of the people around me were doing the same. They were all compromising their health and well-being and their life outside of work in order to do a job which was pretty much impossible. Now, some of them would have been, for some of them, I think it worked better than others. But for me and people like me, and also people not necessarily exactly like me, but for a lot of people in that organization, they were really struggling. And I coached a lot of them and really helped them. And that's amazing, but nobody was supporting me, nobody was coaching me, and I took on more and more and more. So I had all the knowledge. I have a first class honours degree in psychology, for example. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is not to say, look at me. It's to say, yeah, look at me. I had all of this knowledge, but I still burnt out. So what I'm saying is, it's not that you don't know. It's not that you're not doing the things. There's nothing wrong with you at all. It's that we're doing it upside down. We're doing it upside down. What we're doing is we're treating self-care as maintenance. We're saying that self-care is essential so that we can live the lives we want to live, rather than self-care is, by definition, caring for and of yourself. Self-care is not maintenance. Well, for a lot of us, it was. What I'm saying is, let's rebel against self-care as being maintenance, and let's make it about caring for ourselves, genuine caring for ourselves, genuine caring for ourselves. Then it doesn't become about what you do. It becomes about how you do it. And it's actually much, much easier to do it this way once you get it. So it's time to rebel. So if you're struggling in any way with self-care, if it has become another thing to do or another thing to get better at, it's time to rebel and commit to doing it, or to caring for yourself in a way that feels caring, that lights you up, that makes you feel at ease, that is delicious. So that the massage, if we're going, and I think massage is an interesting one, because it's one of the first things people tend to say, well, I book massages for myself, or I've been meaning to book more massages for myself. That's why I'm using massage, because it's such a common one to say. But what if the massage just became something that you did because it's delicious, rather than something you do or bargain for yourself, you do to maintain? It's like, I've earned it, or I justify it because I need it in order to carry on. What if it just becomes, well, I'm the kind of person who has massages because I like them, but I don't need them. And I can honestly say that's how I feel now. And that's so worth rebelling for, because it's so much more fun to not need a massage, to just want one and have one. It's so much nicer. But massages can be a big deal, right? They cost money, they cost time and energy. You have to book them, you have to have the time for them. So we want to make it much easier than that. We want to make it just how you move through your day. We want to start creating self-care the gentle rebel way. So if you don't know about the gentle rebel way, I'm going to introduce it to you now through the lens of self-care, and see if it resonates for you. The gentle rebel commits to herself first, to living her life her way. She listens to her body, like the old friend it indeed is. She connects to her heart, and she controls her attention in a way that nourishes her mind and allows her to focus on what's important to her. So she values her attention. So she values her body, her heart, and her mind. And she allows all of this to come together to navigate. So this is self-care through the lens of listening to the body, connecting to the heart, and controlling the attention. Because if you think about, if we use a massage again, or going for a walk, or any time for yourself, if your attention is elsewhere, then it's not really in that delicious opportunity to reconnect and rest or nourish yourself, whatever it is you're doing. So I'd like to invite you to do a small practice with me that you can take away with you to discover what kind of self-care practices you would like to introduce into your life or let go of. But more than that, to find a way to connect with yourself through the day so that self-care isn't something you do, it's something that you feel. So you feel like you care for yourself. So what I mean by this is, if we think of self-care, if we turn it around as we are, and we say, so self-care is feeling cared for by myself. So I care for myself, I love myself, and therefore the things I do or don't do, because we want to get rid of a ton of stuff, don't do, is because of that, from that place. So I care for and of myself. And then the things you do, which are traditional self-care practices like massages, they're just natural extensions of that. They don't require, they're not such a big deal. They're not so necessary. They're a choice that you identify and decide for yourself. So when do you feel, I'm just going to invite you for a moment to think about this. When do you feel most cared for? And what does that feel like? What does it feel? What would it feel like to have great self-care practices? What would it feel like to feel like you can care for yourself, that you're not always compromising, that you're not always overstretched? What would it feel like? So words that I like are things like nourishing. I would feel nourished. I would feel safe. I personally, I like, particularly in the autumn and winter times in the UK, cozy, wrapped in a warm, soft blanket is a common one for myself and my clients. That feeling of protection from demands, that feeling of space, like there is all the space in the world for you. You have time and space for yourself. You have freedom in choice over how you use your time and your energy. And then there can be other lovely things like, so if we think about time for ourselves and space for ourselves, it's often to do with where our attention is. So when we're trying to have some time for ourselves, if we're constantly distracted, either internally by our own concerns and inability to let go for a moment of other people's needs, it can literally be people demanding things from us. So if you just think about self-care, what would it feel like to have these beautiful boundaries, gentle but firm boundaries, where just for that amount of time, nobody interrupted you, that it was just easy for you, that it was just, yeah, I have this time for myself and I expect not to be interrupted unless it's an emergency. So just notice for you, how would it feel? So self-care, the gentle rebel way, is by turning the attention back to yourself, taking your attention, your time, your energy back to yourself just for a moment. Now, notice what comes up for you as I say this. If it feels like, yeah, that sounds great, Heidi, but in practice, that's just impossible for me. Well, what if we could just make it really easy for you? What would be the easiest way to do that? And for me, I think one of the biggest things we need to be able to do is to be able to do things instantly without any need for kind of organizing and getting stuff together. Just making it not complex, basically, not a big deal, so simple, and also really fast. So if you're not yet using the 1 minute mark, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just going to explain the story of that and how I work. So I specialize in creating tools for women who do have very full lives and find it difficult to start with to find that focus and attention on themselves. So the 1 minute mark is my 1 minute audio, which comes from creating a 4-minute audio, which I sent to a friend who said, it's lovely, but I don't have 4 minutes. And I said, how long do you have? And she said 1 minute. And it was a real challenge for me. Okay, but I'm up for a challenge. Excuse me, I just need a drink. How can I get it down to 1 minute? And I did. And what I really like about that challenge is it's real. You know, she was at home with small children and several businesses, and it was crazy time. but she could find 1 minute, and she still uses that audio. She still uses that practice. Either she can hear my voice in her head without pressing play, or she'll go to the audio, and lots of people use it. It's really, really helpful. So what we want is, we want things like that are just, they have a huge effect, but they're really small. You can kind of sneak them under the radar, so you don't have to kind of battle with your mind to justify them. I think this is really important, isn't it? We want to get rid of the overwhelm where the mind is saying, but you can't do that, it's too hard. Because anything that adds to your pressure, anything that takes more, takes away from getting something else done, it's just too hard. So you want to make it really, really simple. So I'm going to invite you. So the 1 minute mark is my basic neutral noticing practice. So that's noticing yourself rather than everything else, and doing it neutrally. So dropping the judgment. And the reason that this is the way to greater, more meaningful self-care, care for yourself, that lovely, delicious feeling of really feeling cared for, is because if you think about it, we feel most cared for when there is time and space for ourselves. We feel most cared for when we get to be ourselves. We feel most cared for when we feel seen and heard, because when we feel seen and heard, we feel like we can be ourselves. We're seen, we're accepted as we are, and we feel like there's time and space for us because we've been heard, we've been listened to. That the act of listening to somebody without judgment, without trying to solve the problem, without trying to interject with but is that it's expansive. If you've ever had that, and I really hope you have, if you've ever had that incredible experience of really being held by somebody as you worked through a problem or grief or offloaded something, if you've ever had that amazing experience of being listened to without judgment, that holding space for you while you went through that's real deep care. You can do that for yourself, and when you do that for yourself, that is the basis of rebellious self-care. Because from that place of noticing how you feel, completely neutrally, neutral noticing, taking the attention from everything else to yourself, that gives you the time and space that you long for in the external environment. So we can create this space within us. And it's genuinely revolutionary. It's genuinely rebellious, and it's gently rebellious because nobody knows you're doing it. You don't have to declare it. You don't have to say, right, I'm going to spend every Sunday morning, we have an hour to myself. That takes negotiation, right? That can be a big deal. You might want to do that, but I wouldn't suggest starting it, because it's just big, and anything big and demanding, as in I'm changing my boundaries, I'm going to let people know, I'm going to up my self-care, negotiating that, it takes energy, it takes commitment, it's harder to keep going. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm saying let's go gently, let's make it super easy, let's not add to your overwhelm. So neutral noticing completely neutrally how you feel at any moment during your day changes your life, because it allows you to feel like there is time and space for you, and because you are listening to yourself, feeling cared for, feeling acceptable, feeling like there's all the time and space in the world for yourself. So I'm going to invite you right now to do this with me, and then you can use this throughout your day if you choose to, or not. So if it's safe and appropriate to do so, I'm going to invite you to just get comfy and close your eyes, just because it's nice and it's easy and it's a really nourishing thing to do. But if it's not safe and appropriate for you to do that, or it's just going to make you press pause and then add the rest of this to your to-do list, then I invite you just to let my words wash over you instead. So closing your eyes or not, I'm going to invite you, if it's safe and appropriate to do so. So I wouldn't do this if you're driving, so just you decide. So sending all of your awareness down to your feet, and feel your feet on the ground. And then allow your belly to soften if it wants to. And if it doesn't, just notice that. Feeling your feet on the ground, softening belly or not. Maybe allowing the shoulders to move away from your ears if they want to. And if they don't, that's okay. Just notice completely neutrally how you feel in this moment. Noticing how you feel in this moment. And however you feel is however you feel. And that's okay. So you can notice the body and anywhere in the body that just maybe wishes to soften or not. Anywhere that's calling for your attention in your body. Just noticing, listening to your body like the old friend it is. And if you notice that your mind is getting involved in this practice, you can notice that too. You can thank your mind. Thank you for adding stuff to do with my body to my to-do list. Or maybe your body, you can notice your mind making judgments about the physical sensations in your body. So just notice all of it. The physical sensations in your body as you listen and tune into your body. And the running commentary, if any, from your mind about what's going on, about this practice, about yourself, about me, about what's going on in the world around you, about the physical sensations in your body. Just notice all of it completely neutrally. It's just useful information. Don't try to change anything. Don't try to achieve anything. Don't even try to relax. Just notice. Notice how you feel. And however you feel is just however you feel, and that's okay. You can only start from where you are. And then, if you wish to, you can, when you do this yourself, ask questions. And we're not asking the question to the mind, because the mind tends to get very overloaded. We're just going to ask the questions by allowing the words to wash through the body and the heart. So we just allow the questions to wash through us, and you can ask anything you want. So you can ask if there's a part of your body, for example, that is calling for your attention. You can hold that part of your body softly in your attention with love and kindness, and you can ask, what do you need? What do you need? Or how can I help? How can I help? And just notice what comes up for you. And just go gently, kindly, curiously, playfully, neutrally. Sometimes there could be tears, sometimes there could be laughter, sometimes there could be the physical sensation goes or it changes. Just notice. And then if you want, you can also move your attention to your heart space, the center of the chest. And it can be really nice to place the hands here because it feels nice. And also because it helps train your attention onto this area of your body. And then if you want to, after really taking your attention into this part of your body, into the center of the chest, the heart space, noticing completely neutrally any physical sensations here, if you want to, you can ask your heart, what do you need? How can I help you? What would you like more of? What do you long for? What would make you really happy right now? And then just notice whatever comes up for you or not. And then just releasing this practice and taking from it whatever you want and letting go of anything that doesn't resonate. And knowing, trusting yourself to take from it what's right for you, what feels good for you, what feels easy and lovely and delicious. Just notice. Notice how you feel about doing this practice with me. And then when you're ready, I invite you to gently open your eyes if you've had them closed, and just notice how you feel about having done that neutral noticing practice focused on the body and the heart. Well done. And if you've got your journal with you, this is a great time. If you're on the replay, you can pause and have a scribble, anything that comes up for you. But if you don't, know that anything important will come back. You don't have to grab at it. You don't have to cling at it. Anything important will come back. And if this felt really good, if you found this a useful thing to do, maybe committing to doing this once a day or a few times a day, it's up to you. I'm just inviting you to start to turn self-care into care of yourself by listening to yourself, by asking yourself how you are, by noticing completely neutrally how you are during your day. And from that place, once this becomes a practice, from that place, we can use neutral noticing to change how we move through the day. Because when we regularly listen and tune in, listen to what the body needs, how the body's feeling and how the heart's feeling, and while we're doing that, we'll also get a sense of how busy the mind is, the thought loops it's stuck in, whether it's worried about something, whether it needs something itself. So sometimes the mind gets so overloaded, it just wants silence. Sometimes it likes music. Sometimes it's soothed by being outside. Sometimes there's some offloading needs to happen. Sometimes we just feel like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had all of that stuff being held in my mind. I'm just going to pour that onto paper, get it out, get it all out. Don't carry it around in your head. So neutral noticing is a fantastic self-care practice because it raises self-awareness. So you get to know yourself, and only you can really know what you need and how to take care of yourself best. And often what we're looking for is the self-care schedule forever. You know, it's like, oh, if only I could solve this problem of self-care, then I'd be able to cope really well and I'd be able to push myself through all of that and it will all be fine. I'd argue that that's one of the problems, is that the mind likes to solve problems and it likes everything fixed. And that the thing is about self-care is it changes through the seasons, it changes with menstrual cycle, it changes with the hormonal cycle throughout our lives, it changes through the seasons of our lives. And the beauty of neutral noticing as a listening and deep act of care for oneself is that it allows for that flexibility. It allows to notice when actually, because you've been listening to yourself more and you've allowed yourself to let go of tension in a traffic light, or rest when you're tired, or go outside and just jump for joy because it's sunny or whatever. Once we get more in tune with ourselves, we start to feel better. And then suddenly it's like, oh, actually things have changed, so now I need to change what I'm doing to take care of myself. Can you see? It's a really beautiful way of changing how you relate to yourself, changing your relationship with yourself to one of deep love and self-care and acceptance. This is how I am at the moment. It removes the pressure to be constantly improving oneself, as in trying to be better. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. There's so much more obviously to this journey. I would love to share more with you, but this is just a short workshop, an introduction, giving you something practical you can do. And I really hope that you will take this forward. Please let me know how you get on. Please reach out if you'd like to give me feedback about it, ask questions. I'm here for you. This is my work. I love this so much. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I just, yeah, thank you. It means the world that you registered for this, that you're here, that you're making use of my work. If you'd like to work with me and get support to create your own personal self-care rebellion, then do reach out, because I have lots of flexible ways of working together. I have some new tiny, what I'm calling tiny huge coaching packages, which are just a month long to just go all in and create tiny huge change. So real commitment for just a month to really shift something in your life for you. So yeah, anything, any feedback, if you'd like to work with me, if you'd like to ask questions, please do reach out. So thank you so much for being here. Before you go, I'm just going to invite you to just notice what's been the most important thing. What's the most important thing? If you could just take one thing with you, what would it be? One thing. Thank you. Thank you for being here.